And I am going to share my screen with you so we can get started. So JumpStart is a program that serves incoming freshmen. It's been around for close to 20 years, I think now, in some form or other. JumpStart is like a lot of university summer programs in that it aims to kind of transition freshmen into the university. It's unlike them in that it serves such a broad section of the university freshman population. Some really kind of are narrow and they target a lot of different people. Jumpstart is really for anyone, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. All right. So who are Jumpstart students? Parents have been asking me that. I'm sure they ask Matthew that on the regular, like, is this the kind of thing that my student should do? Um, as I said, we serve a really broad section of the population. And so you'll see all kinds of students from all different majors here. There are some programs and majors that really push their students into the Jumpstart program in the summer. For example, Grove Scholars is a program that targets STEM students and it helps them finish on time so they can go on to med school and all that kind of stuff. The Chinese flagship does intensive language instruction in summer, and these are two of our students. Jonte is starting his residency next year, and or this summer, I should say, and Brianna, honestly, she's here. She is in the food pantry. She's very involved. She's had so many options. I think she's now doing like a really special computer science program. They're both outstanding examples of Jumpstart students, and they're both part of programs that say, hey, we really want our students to do Jumpstart because it helps them finish the university in a timely fashion. It helps them start freshman year with a little more savvy than your average freshman. So we bring in all kinds of students from different majors. If you're thinking, will my student find people like them in Jumpstart? The odds are they will, because we have students from just everywhere. Let me talk a little bit about what it is and why it is that these programs want their students to do Jumpstart. So Jumpstart really has sort of several aspects to it that the university finds appealing. And then there's some pieces that families especially find appealing. I'll talk first about the social piece because that's the piece that students especially love. We offer sort of a small community. We're intentional about managing it so that we don't end up with hundreds of Jumpstart students. All right, the freshman class is going to be big, but Jumpstart is never any bigger than 100 or so students, and we break them into small community groups. That means that they get time to really spend with one another, time to spend with our peer leaders. Our peer leaders are undergraduates, like a person like Jonte or like a person like Brianna. They are leaders in our community who work with us in the summer, usually juniors and seniors, and they work with the Jumpstart students in small groups to help them get to know one another. They'll facilitate some of the more sort of academic and co-curricular conversations with them that we kind of plan into the program. But they also will do things like, hey, I'm going downtown, I'm going to go grab some ice cream tonight, who wants to go? And just sort of organize sort of informal social activities for their groups too. So that's the part I think that most Jumpstart students will tell you. I loved it because I made friends, I got mentors that I stayed in touch with for the next few years. We also do some programming that I'll speak about more in detail later, but Adulting 101. So we try to focus on some of the key things that freshmen probably don't realize they need to know, but they do need to know in order to succeed functionally on their own without, calling home several times a day. So we talk about that kind of stuff. We also connect them to resources and organizations on campus. So everything from, where's the counseling center? How does it work? To, what are the clubs on campus? What is the Column Society? And how do I rise to the level of a student that would be selected for it? What's Rush like? And how do you manage Greek life? We talk about all that kind of stuff. We also talk about academics and how you transition academically. College is different than high school. You all know this, I'm sure, but the students aren't always quite sure that they know that. So in Jumpstart, we have a few things that are working in our favor. For one, they can only take so many classes, right? In June or July, they can take 2 classes at a time. In August, they can take 1. So they can really focus on just managing the details and getting them right for those classes. But we also have some other things. Um, we do some brain training, we call it, in our workshops with them. We use some of the science of learning and studying to help them sort of think differently, maybe, about what they're doing while they're physically in a classroom, and what they're doing when they're studying, when they're trying to really work with the material and process it in ways that they can use and retain over time. So we do some brain training with them, something similar to the freshman year experience class, but in a more compressed format. And we do offer academic support. As I said, we have peer leaders. They're all top-notch students, and between them, we typically have a team of 6 to 10, depending on how big a summer it is. And that team has expertise in everything from, English classes and public policy to, chemistry and biology. So we can cover tutoring if we need to as well. Another thing that a lot of programs and parents like as well is the fact that students gain credits while they're with us. Freshman year can be daunting, and especially students who are taking a really ambitious course load because of their program, or students who are maybe feeling a little bit nervous about that academic transition, may prefer to have some classes in the summer so that their fall and spring semesters are a little bit lighter. So gaining credits is definitely an advantage for a lot of students. And finally, it's about saving money. And I know that's a thing that parents always ask us about. I'll talk about the scholarships in a few minutes, but you get a scholarship in JumpStart. Whether you're out of state or in state, your student will qualify for a scholarship just because they were part of JumpStart. I want to emphasize and underline here that it's not just taking classes. If your student just wants to take classes in the summer, they really can. They don't need to be in JumpStart just to do that. Sometimes students don't get it. They just think, oh, well, this is just how you take classes as a freshman. There are other obligations, and I want to make sure that you're aware of that, and your student's aware of that. So you do want them to attend workshops twice a week, right? Like, they're going to do the brain training, they're going to do the adulting. That is part of JumpStart. The only thing that would mean that they don't have to attend a workshop is if they're part of something like Grove Scholars that maybe has conflicting obligations, or their Chinese flagship tutoring is happening at the same time. And then we'll get them some of that material in another way. They'll still get it, but they won't have to be physically present for anything that they have another conflict with. Academics come first, and some of the programming that the flagship does, or Grove Scholars, for example, it's very similar, or it takes the place of and serves the same function. So, but that is an important part. No, we don't want to end the show. Why doesn't it want to let me advance? Okay. It's also about participating in a community. So being a part of JumpStart means that you're going to be, talking with other students, you're going to be living with other students. And that's, like I said, that's probably the part that the students most enjoy. We always sort of tell our freshmen, your peer leaders are going to ask you to do things, like go get ice cream or go to a bonfire up at Sardis or that kind of thing. Say yes. It may feel weird. You don't know these people yet, but say yes, it's worth doing. It's a great way to get networked and to start building those friendships. And you won't get that if you're just taking classes. You won't have that intentional kind of community. It's also about making new habits. As I spoke about before, college is different. We don't think about it much as adults, but freshmen have a lot to learn just about getting themselves up, eating on a regular basis, remembering that it's time to do laundry sometimes. There's just a lot of things they need to learn. And in the summer, with the slower pace, it's a really nice time to learn those things. It's a nice time to get to know campus. For some students, it's the first time they've really been a pedestrian in a significant way. They have to walk. Oh my gosh, they complain about the walking. They need good shoes. So learning to find their way around, to find their way to different buildings, to look on their schedule and decipher what those, little abbreviations for buildings mean. How do I connect this like LAM with Lamar Hall, for example? They have to learn those things, and that's a big piece of it. It's just getting a little more savvy about college life in general. And finally, of course, as I mentioned before, there's that scholarship. You can see the dollar amounts here. That's what it'll be. Now, we'll talk later about the importance of your student enrolling fully in the number of classes that we ask them to for JumpStart. To be clear, if your student decides to take half of a normal summer course load, so normal would be 2 classes, 6 credit hours. If they take just 1 class, they can't be in JumpStart, so they don't get that scholarship. Um, for the university, this is part of like the secret recipe of success. They have to have enough to do on campus that they get a worthwhile experience, that they really start to acclimate academically. And if they're not doing a full course load in June or July, then they're not getting that experience. So they're not, meriting that scholarship. So that's an important piece, but that's another thing that matters. And I want to make sure you guys saw that. I'll talk a little bit now about what those workshops are. I mentioned brain training. So what does that mean? What are you talking about? What are the differences? So we'll look at things like what we call interleaving, where students will learn material and then they'll cycle back through that material even as they're learning new material. So when they get home after a lecture, rather than just review the material that they just learned, they'll go back and look back over the past week and say, oh, I'm going to bring in some of this new material and intersperse it as I'm studying. I'm going to bring in the old material and intersperse it as I'm studying the new material. We'll talk with them about things like that and why they do it. We like to do that in a way that's kind of involved. Like we'll have them participate in like memory games and then go, hey, did you notice the difference between these 2 conditions? Look, this is how it works. This is how you can apply it to studying. So we do a lot of things like that to try to help them think differently about studying and learning. We do some goal setting and talking about motivation. A lot of students come into college kind of conditioned to just get that grade. But we know that that's one of the weaker sort of motivations for actually persisting when things get difficult. And whether it's next year or it's junior year or it's senior year, it will get tough. No matter how well prepared your student is, no matter how gifted they are, there'll be a moment when they're having trouble. And so we'll talk a little bit about motivation and helping them delve into the deeper sources of their motivation to hopefully get them going and give them those resources that when they need them, they'll be there. We talk about mental health as well. We have the counseling center come in and do a really nice presentation for them about just practical things they can do to take care of themselves. And time management. One of my kids is a senior, and there's a real difference, I can tell you, between her time management skills and my sophomore's time management skills. So we'll talk a little bit about leveling up with time management in the college setting. Adulting 101 mostly takes the form of some soft skills stuff. We'll talk to them about negotiating conflict. For example, they're going to have issues with roommates or good friends, maybe, with people in their classes. So we'll talk to them about some of the soft skills you need for those situations, how to write a good email to a professor versus, hey, I don't know what's due this week, that kind of email. We'll talk about some of those things. And we'll also do some budget planning. We'll take them through sort of thinking about that. Some of them tell me, oh, it doesn't matter. My parents are taking care of it all. And I'm like, you know what? It's going to matter one of these days. So it's still good for you. And then we'll also talk about information on how they can get involved on campus. What are some good events that are going to be coming up in freshman year that they should be watching their email for so that they can attend, that kind of stuff. All right. And I just want to share, like, we do all these things, not just because they seem like good ideas to us, but because students have told us that they're good ideas. Over the years, we've studied these things. It's one of the things actually I've done a little bit of research on myself, but we have continued to kind of investigate this program and to work on shaping it. One of the things we know that they used last year, because they told us they did, was some of our stuff on mental health, wellness, and on time management. When the rest of the world was reeling and we were all struggling to adapt to COVID, our JumpStart students gave us feedback in surveys that they were using some of the things they learned in JumpStart to adapt. And that made us feel really good about what we were doing. We were a little worried that our results for last year were going to be really confused because of all that they had been through. But the study results suggested that maybe some of what we had done had helped them be a little more resilient. So we feel like we're headed the right direction. I'm sure we'll continue to evolve. But I just wanted to share with you, we do these things for a reason, and it seems to be working according to what the students tell us and what the data says. I want to pause a moment and just ask if there are any questions you want to ask about sort of the workshops and that kind of thing. We're going to talk a little bit more about the logistics of how we get the program started, how you get into the program, all that kind of stuff in a second. But do you have questions about what we do that we need to answer at this time?
So if a student does the August session, is that one class or two classes?
That'll be one class, 3 credit hours.
Okay, great.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And how long is that program? Is it 3 weeks or 4 weeks? The August session?
It's 2.
Oh, it's 2 weeks. Okay, awesome.
Yeah, they're fast. Yeah.
Anything? I have a question. In the summer, my daughter is on the Chinese flagship.
Mm-hmm.
So she's gonna be having June and July.
Yep.
Does she do it both months?
So she can do JumpStart both months, but she doesn't need to participate in the workshops both months. So she only needs to go to one set,
Okay.
and then she's good.
Okay. Now, you mentioned before that they need to have 2 classes, but she's only doing 1 a month.
For the flagship, those are like 5 credit hours, those classes.
Yeah.
So it counts as 2 because it's so many hours and it's so much work.
Okay.
Yeah, good question.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. I will go ahead and take more questions in a few minutes. But thank you. Those were both good questions that I think served a lot of people on this call. I'm going to talk a little bit about housing now and how that works, because it's one of the pieces that we get a lot of questions about. So in June and July, students are going to be living together with other students on campus that are there for the summer. Maybe not all JumpStart students, but they'll certainly see a lot of familiar faces. In June and July, they're not housed in the hall they've chosen for fall. Okay, not all the residence halls are even open in the summer. We try to keep them kind of together. And so when your student registers, they'll let, for housing, and I'll talk about that again in a minute. When they will register for summer and fall together. But if they've chosen June or July session, they will not choose the same place, right? They will probably just be assigned to wherever they get in June and July. But in fall, they can still pick, what their top choices are. In August JumpStart students can choose their room and hall for fall and get that same room in August. Okay, that's one of the advantages of August. Students like it because they're like, great, I move in once and I'm done. The only exception to that this summer might be Stockard Hall, just because they're doing some renovation and updates in there. And we hope it'll be done by August, but it might not be done until right before the end of August. We'll just see, how that kind of thing goes. But so an advantage in June and July is that if you're a JumpStart student, you're trying to get to know campus, you're going to be living in a residence hall that feels full of people. You'll see your friends all the time in there, and it feels lively, right? That's an advantage. Disadvantage, you move in, in June, move out, come back in fall, do it all over again. August, advantage, you get to move once, it's awesome, but it might be a bit of a ghost town in there. And I know sometimes students find it creepy because there's just not that many people in their hall yet, right? Because they're not all doing JumpStart. They haven't moved in for fall yet, and it can be a little quiet. So this is a thing where you want to know your student. Are they going to be fine with a quiet hall, or are they going to prefer like being surrounded by other people for their first time away from home, if this is, their first time for a significant experience like this? So just be forewarned, that's kind of how that works. The Ole Miss student housing website has this wonderful timeline on it, and I just wanted to draw your attention to it. If your students are telling you, I don't know anything about housing, tell them to check their email. Housing no doubt has communicated with them. I have a senior this year. She's actually going to matriculate to Ole Miss. And so I have to remind her, you should check your email, honey. You should probably, do these things, because housing has a timeline. They are moving forward. A lot of students right now are working on finding roommates. They're using if they're in like the honors program, they might be using the honors group me. If they're just, in the general population, there's a Facebook group that's out there. So students are doing this in a number of different ways, trying to find roommates, because these dates are coming up, right? The 15th is your last deadline, your date to request and confirm a roommate. So I would definitely check in with your students if they haven't talked about this with you, and just make sure that they understand sort of how it's all going to work. And you can see this April 16th date. April room selection access times are going to be sent to those who paid the application fee by the 9th of April. And it's kind of first come, first serve, and then a little magic with roommate matching that happens when they pick their rooms. So just make sure that your students are aware of this and that you're aware of it too. You pick your fall rooms at the same time that you tell housing that you want summer housing. All right. So I'll speak a little bit now about next steps. If you want to get your student involved with JumpStart, you think this sounds like a good idea after tonight, there are some things you need to do. And like I said, we do cap it. Usually this time of year, we'd already have shut down and said, no, we don't have any more room for anybody. But because of COVID, everything was kind of delayed this year. So you're still in good shape, but I wouldn't wait to the last minute to register. The first thing you can do is register for JumpStart on our website. The deposit is due at that time. We ask for a deposit just so we have that commitment. We know we're not saving that space for someone who's gonna, ditch, and then we've said no to, 100 more people. We want to make sure that you reserve your spot and you're committed. We are fully planning to be in person this summer. I don't see that anything will stop us. At this point, 20% of Lafayette County, where we live, is vaccinated in the adult population. So I think we're very much on track to have a good, healthy summer. But if something crazy happens like last year, I can't imagine, something happens, we would go virtual and your students would still have JumpStart. So that deposit is just to make sure you've reserved your spot. No matter what happens, we promise there will be JumpStart. But it's looking very good for the summer. The next thing you're going to do is make sure, now this should have happened a while ago, but make sure you've registered for an orientation session before JumpStart begins. So in other words, pick a date that happens before your JumpStart start date. So if you're in June session for JumpStart, but you pick a June orientation date, that's going to be too late. You've got to have one of those May orientation dates in order to be in JumpStart for June, okay? And the reason is because you're going to register for classes at orientation. Right, make sure you register for your summer housing in April. Make sure you choose a meal plan for summer. We won't do that for you. We figure students like some flexibility, and so we'll let you guys make your choices about food. Maybe you have, a brother in town who cooks and is going to have your child over for dinner every night. It's up to you how you want to do that. And then the next thing is what is going to happen is at orientation, you're going to register for summer and fall classes. I always tell students, make sure you tell your advisor, I'm a JumpStart student. I need to register for summer classes because they are very good at what they do. They can see it. They should be able to see it in the system, but they're not omniscient. And also mistakes get made when you're doing thousands of registrations. So remind them that you need to be registered for both summer and fall classes. 6 hours of classes for June and July, unless you're adding in a lab there, that might change things a little, or your flagship, and then 3 hours for August. That's what you're looking for. I was asked a little earlier if you can do multiple sessions, and that's absolutely possible. You can, and you don't have to do the workshops each session. Attend JumpStart kickoff. That's going to happen the day before classes start. We will send you information about it. We'll say, hey, we're going to do our kickoff. We're going to have you guys for dinner. Here's where to be and when to be on that day. Housing will tell you when you can move in. So that's something that's a little tricky. Sometimes students think we're going to tell them like when they can arrive to move in. And also when kickoff is, we can't control that piece of it. Housing does their own thing. But we'll make sure that dinner is served after all the housing move-in has happened. So you will not miss dinner. It's going to be Taylor Grocery. It's always very good. So, and then students attend the workshops like we talked about. That is required. I always want to say that as many times as I can. They're not optional unless you're in a program that is doing something similar. And then I will know that because the program director will have told me that. You need to attend them. It's part of the bargain, right? You want your scholarship. You also do the things the university wants you to do. And like I said, the university sees this as a way to make sure that we have successful freshmen who are happy and doing well. Something that you'll need to do once you get into your session, and I will take your students through this, I'll like demonstrate it for them, is complete a summer financial aid application. We'll show you how that works. It's a little form that's in the students' system. They do it all online. It's not a problem. And then they'll accept their scholarships like around the middle of that session. As a parent, you may be checking their bursar bill and going, I don't see that scholarship yet. Oh my gosh, this is so expensive. Don't worry. Sometimes it just takes, because the bursar and financial aid are two different offices. So sometimes one does one thing before the other. That scholarship will show up. They will accept it, and we'll tell them how to do that. And then you will see at the end of the session, you'll see what your bill actually should be with that scholarship deducted from it. Okay. And you'll pay that bill at the end of the session. Sometimes students ask, can I use my federal aid? I have like federal Pell Grants. Something good to know is that June, you can use this past year's FAFSA for. So the year of 2020, 2021, they can use that FAFSA, which they probably haven't even done because they were still in high school. They can use that for June. If they want to do July, that would be on the next year's FAFSA. So if you have federal aid, and if what I just said sounds like, oh my gosh, that's crazy, there's a lot of information, I'm happy to answer more questions about it. Matthew's happy to go over it again. Either of us can help you. I just want to throw that out there so you're aware there is additional aid. If you qualify for federal aid, you can use that sometimes along with your scholarship. Most other scholarships aren't used in the summer. Some things that you want to remember that I've talked about. Choose an orientation session that happens before your JumpStart session. Register for the correct number of credit hours, right? Don't take just 3 hours in June. You're not a JumpStart student if you do that. Choose your housing and meal plan. That's something you do separately from the program. And just make sure that you show up to the workshops and complete the required work. This year, usually we'll have the students all gathered together for like the first 20 minutes or so at a workshop, and then we'll send them into small groups. This year, because space is at a premium and we're still doing social distancing on campus, we're going to do the like big piece remotely, and then we'll have them come into their little community groups in like nice spaces around campus, maybe classrooms when we feel like it. Their peer leaders will choose. I imagine they'll be in the Grove and they'll be eating like popsicles a lot, that kind of thing. But it'll be up to the peer leaders to decide where they meet in small groups. But either way, they will have all that information and they'll know how to do it beforehand. So I want to go ahead and stop talking. I usually, when I teach, I like to just do a lot of back and forth. But this is really not the great forum for that. So now I've got the information out there. I want to go ahead and ask y'all, what questions do you have for me? What would you like to know that I haven't answered tonight?
Yeah.
There's your camera. I see. Does somebody have a question? I heard a voice. No.
Wendy, I can ask a question because we are a little bit or super confused with everything going on.
Sure.
So we will register for JumpStart before we register for the Chinese classes.
Yes.
So because right now we don't know what to do. Okay, we know that we gotta wait until May 17 orientation. And that will be the one that we also register for summer?
Yes.
Okay, so until May 17, I don't have to do anything for her to attend the summer program or attend the fall program.
Right.
All I got to do is sign her up for the JumpStart.
Yep.
Okay.
Just sign her up for JumpStart and make sure she chooses her fall and summer housing when the housing window opens.
And the housing for the summer will be assigned. Do you know which dorm they're gonna be?
I think they're using Minor Hall and Residence Hall 2 this year for June and July housing. I think
Okay,
that's right.
and then at the end of July, we have to go there, pick up everything, bring back home, and move back in 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's not the fun part. Sometimes people will short-term rent some storage. They'll go in with other students and just rent a little storage unit.
Okay.
Yeah, I know.
That's a good idea. Because I think she's gonna choose to stay in minors also. But it would be nice to just extend it a little longer, but that's okay. Okay, so for now, all we do is register JumpStart, and then the next step would be in May 17 registration.
That's
Okay.
correct. You got it. Good questions, though. We get asked those a lot. What else? You can drop it in the chat, or you can.
Oh, one more. Are you gonna
Sure.
give us a link on where to go to register later?
Yeah, so I think Lo has dropped the Jumpstart URL in the chat. So you can just click on the Jumpstart URL, or if you would like, you can just Google Jumpstart Ole Miss and it'll pop up. But yeah.
Okay.
My kids make fun of me when I say URL. They're like, it's URL, Mom. I'm like, some people in my age group say URL. Sorry. It's just like the GIF versus GIF argument. What else would you guys like to know?
Wendy, someone asked, how are students chosen to participate in JumpStart?
Oh, good question. Right. So unlike so many other programs like Fast Track or Lucky Day or Honors, this is not competitive. You can just register. It's just once you, I see that comment there. Once you've registered, you are in. And then once Matthew says we've reached our cap, we're done. We can't add anybody else. And that really has to do with space limitations and staffing limitations. As well as that desire to not be giant. So the students have a small enough community, they get to know each other. What else? What else can I answer for you guys?
Hey, Koo.
Anybody else with pressing questions? I know you must have them. If they're not about Jumpstart, you're welcome to ask us questions just about the university. I can't claim any exhaustive knowledge about everything Ole Miss, but Matthew and I have, well, Matthew's been around a lot longer than the rest of us. Between us, we can answer other kinds of questions if you need. How many kids do participate? So we take about 100 per session. That's where we cap things. And so that's kind of our sweet spot. We feel like if we get much bigger than that, they don't have that kind of sense of intimate, like I know you really well community. And their little communities are usually between 10 and 12 students that meet together on a regular basis with our peer leaders. Other questions? Matthew, can you think of anything that you've been getting a lot on the phone lately that people are asking?
A few always ask about the scholarship. You've kind of already explained that well. They ask about, why do I have to attend summer orientation before JumpStart? And answer is to that is, students are going to meet with their academic advisor to build their fall course schedule, normally during orientation. That's also the time for them to meet with the advisor to talk about summer classes. Because, you want them to check with their advisor, make certain what they're taking during the summer fits with their curriculum that they're going to be doing. So that's whether they're decided in a certain degree program or even undecided. Their academic advisors will help them figure out what's the best classes they need to take.
And that's really important because that's not a decision that Matthew or I can make. We can't tell you do this or do that, because we're not looking at it in the context of the student's academic major, their transcript and prior experience. So it's really important. The advisor has more information on that and is better positioned to do it. Kim asked, when do you register for housing default? It's the same schedule as that little timeline I showed you. So it'll be on that same schedule. And you can find more information about that on housing's website. If you just go would one of y'all drop the housing website into the, thank you, Lo. So they're gonna drop it into the chat, and then you can click on it if you would like, but it's right there on their front page, a little timeline and more information for you guys if you need it. What else can I answer?
Yes. How will we be able to obtain the recording of this if we have, want to go back and review and?
Sure. So I will send it out after. It'll take a little while. I'll get it on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, and then we'll just send y'all a link so you can watch it or show it to your students if you need.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Great.
I have one more question. On the registration, you ask for the ACT score. Do you want the composite or the one that you get the best of each one?
The composite or the super score, either one is honestly fine with us in JumpStart.
Okay.
Yeah. The roommate question. Yeah, my daughter's been really stressed about that too. I mean, when I was in college, it was just the luck of the draw. You get what you get. And that's how it is. I went to Florida State. And my roommate was a nightmare, and I lived through it and moved on with life. But they're trying to make this great choice. It feels like such an important choice, right? Like, I don't want to get this wrong, and I don't want people to not like me. Lots of students do not find a roommate beforehand, especially in the haphazard way that they're doing it through Facebook and GroupMe and all this stuff. So please tell your student, do not worry. You will have a roommate that is assigned based on they do that interest survey that housing does. And maybe it'll be a good fit, and maybe it won't. If it's not a great fit, it's a pretty short period of your life. And also our housing CAs are really good at helping students navigate conflict. The biggest advice I can give freshmen is, and I do this all the time because I teach the freshman year experience, in terms of getting along with roommates, don't let small problems turn into really big ones. If it's a small problem, address it up front early on and do it in a really nice, constructive way, but directly. Don't wait and let it build up until you're like, I can't stand you and your toothpaste all over the sink anymore, and I've just had it with all the other things. They need to deal with those things early on, because a lot of roommate conflicts come from just them simmering resentment and then not, and then suddenly they find out they're really mad at each other. And if they just talked a couple months ago, it would have been much better. But they just don't know how to handle conflict very well at this age. They're still, I don't want to be mean. You don't have to be mean. Just tell them you're upset. It's going to be fine. And our housing folks do a good job with that.
Wendy, I have a question that's not necessarily JumpStart related. It's more university. My daughter was admitted as a potential biology major into a specific college, but if in between now and even her orientation first week of June, she chooses to switch where the major would be in a different college, do I do something about that before orientation, call somebody, or just while we're there mention that, hey, I don't know if she wants to do this anymore, she wants to do that?
That would be fine. Yeah, that's perfectly fine. I mean, she's not far enough down the road yet to worry about it too much. I would just let them know at orientation. And that's also a great opportunity for the advisor to say, well, tell me more about that, and kind of help draw out from her what she's thinking. So yeah.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. That's another good question. We hear a lot. Other questions about freshman year at Ole Miss or about JumpStart? I'm kind of curious just to see a show of hands. How many of y'all went to Ole Miss? You can just do that little yellow hand icon if you want. Down at the bottom, there's reactions. I'm not seeing a lot of hands raised. Oh, there we go. Another Wendy. Great. Okay. Yeah, I see a few more. Anybody went to Florida State? No, it was a great school. I love Florida State. Florida State and University of Connecticut, my two schools. All right. Other questions? You feeling pretty confident about this whole being a parent of a college student thing?
No.
We should probably start a JumpStart support group for parents. Yeah, it's hard. My daughter will be here in town, but I told her, don't come home. You need to just do the college thing. Don't ask us to meet you for lunch. Just go and do your life. We'll try to stay out of yours. But I still know I'm going to worry and think about her all the time. Oh, I see Lo asked if anybody went to Tennessee. So we've got some veteran parents here. I'm glad it was helpful. Yeah, feel free to drop off if you don't have questions, or if you do want to linger and see if there's more questions, you're welcome to do so. Any of our veteran parents who've done college want to offer some advice to the rest of us? They had their older kids already done this. No sages among us. That's all right. All right. Well, I'm going to say thank you all for being here tonight. I'll hang out and you're welcome to go. And if you do have questions, like I said, I'll still be on here. Matthew will all be here if you want to linger.
Okay. I just about finished the application, so you should be seeing it either today or tomorrow morning, and we should be good to go.
Wonderful. We'll be in touch.
Yay.
And looking forward to having what's your child's name again, Marietta?
Maria Elizabeth.
All right. We'll keep an eye out.
Yeah, we call her Elizabeth here in America, but I'm from Brazil. You can see I have an accent. So in Brazil, everybody calls her Maria. But more than likely at Ole Miss, she's going to be Elizabeth.
Okay. Okay. Very
Okay.
good. We'll look forward to getting to know her. Take care.
Okay.
Oh, good. I'm glad people are starting it already. You're going to have a busy day tomorrow, Matthew. Wendy, good question. Yeah, no, this is nothing like summer college in terms of they live on their own just like they will in regular college. They won't even, they won't see me at night checking up on them to make sure they do their own thing, just like they will in fall. They will have plenty of freedom. Caroline, if you're wondering if you've registered, Matthew can always check on that. Would you mind dropping your email, maybe privately to him in the chat? You can just message Matthew